boo him every time he goes near it. And a symbolic mark there by the stockbroker, Stephen Kernahan. He takes the mark after the side.
Yes, and at three-quarter time, it's the Swans by 22 points. Craig Holden helped off the ground a moment ago by 2 trainers. The major goal kickers till the last change for the Swans, 3 to Mitchell, who got 2 in that quarter, 2 each to Morwood, Wright and Kappa, while Kernahan dominating for Carlton with 5, and Silvani has 2. At three-quarter time, Sydney 12-14, 86, lead Carlton 9-10, 64 by 22 points.
We have amongst us a returning hero.
Saturday, an Australian adventurer goes to the frozen end of the planet. Dick Smith attempts the first solo flight to the North Pole by helicopter. A journey of magnificent spectacle and considerable risk.
You can see there's absolutely no horizon there at all. Now this is what they call whiteout conditions, where I'm virtually on instruments. My gyro has frozen up. The magnetic compass is totally useless. Minus 37 degrees centigrade.
Adventure over ice, the perils and the grandeur. Solo to the top of the world. Saturday at 7:30, straight after the news.
Well, Carlton kicked 3 goals, 3 to 2-5 in that quarter to peg the Swans back by 4 points. The margin at the last change, 22 points. And yet halfway through the term, Kevin Bartlett, it really looked as if the Swans just about had the match at their mercy.
Tim, that's correct, but Steve Kernahan, what a magnificent game he's played tonight for Carlton. He's got 5 goals now to three-quarter time. He's played all over the field. He's been in the ruck. He's been full forward and centre-half forward, and he's been an inspirational leader. At half-time, Robert Walls made 9 major changes, and certainly it proved to be a winning point for Robert Walls in that quarter. Silvani went into defence. Silvani had been magnificent on the forward line with 2 goals with Kernahan, and he's played great down there in defence. He's continued that good forward work on. We've also saw Bradley went into the forward pocket and roving from the centre. Johnston then went into the centre and lifted. He'd been a very poor player in that first half, but when he went into the centre of the ground, he did take away a little bit from Greg Williams, who was a dominating player in that first half. Rhys Jones, well, he went to full forward, then back to the wing. Rod Carter's been great down there in that last line of defence against Rhys Jones in that quarter. But Kernahan, when he went down there, that was the problem, because Dennis Carroll, the Swans captain, couldn't hold him in the air. The other move, Dennis went to the half-back flank, Glass got to the wing, and finally Meldrum even went down to that full forward line. So Robert Walls wasn't frightened that quarter to move his players around, and it did have an effect. For the Swans, their tackling was absolutely superb in that quarter, but on the scoreboard, I'm certain Tom Hafey would be very disappointed that they actually lost 4 points in that quarter. Healy was great, Mitchell and Williams, and I mentioned Carter before. So the Swans, even though they played well that quarter, I would think, Doug, very disappointed with the fact that Kernahan snatched that quarter away from him with those 3 great goals.
I agree, Kev. It was Kernahan's quarter, and I think Tom would be terribly disappointed with 2 15-metre penalties against Carroll that gave Kernahan that much closer shot for goal. I guess the other significant factor was the fact that Ironmonger's dominance disappeared. I think he might have run out of puff, because he did an enormous amount of work in the first half, and to me, it wasn't as if Justin Madden really took over. It just looked to me as if Ironmonger had lost some of his stamina.
Well, of course, Tom Hafey took Ironmonger off just before half-time. And in the past, Ironmonger has had trouble seeing out a full game. He's such a giant of a man, and he played so well in that first half. So maybe Tom Hafey had an inkling that Ironmonger could struggle to see out the game. But I think we've also got to give marks to Madden, because he did improve that quarter. I thought Madden contested a lot stronger. So I think we've got to give him a pat on the back there.
One player I was a bit disappointed in, Kev, was Warwick Kappa. For the first time for a long time, I thought in that quarter he really lost interest a little. I mean, his job is to fly and fly recklessly so the little fellas can come in, and a couple of times he didn't even get airborne when the ball came down there, and when he's not at his acrobatic, aggravating best, the team looks pretty ordinary up forward.
Plus, I think we've got to give an extra pat on the back to Silvani, because a youngster played very well on the forward line. The ball wasn't coming down. Walls moved him to full back, and he's played in front of Kappa. He's punched the ball strongly away when he's been caught from behind, and that's one area where the Carlton players have to improve. We saw Bradley in that quarter take the ball off the pack with that quick left foot kick. It bounced the wrong way, but trying to get smaller players to the front of the pack, I'm certain that's why Robert Walls has moved a lot of these players around. And in this quarter, he'll be certainly hoping that they can improve in that small man department. Dorotich has been magnificent, Tim, right throughout the game. He's had several opponents. Heywood started on on Dorotich. He was too good for Heywood. Then they brought Smith on. And Smith did a couple of things when he came onto the ground. He's about 6'6", 6'7", but Dorotich has been strong all night. We see there Bernie Evans hasn't really been in the play. Neil Cordy improved a little bit that quarter, but really has had no influence on the game whatsoever. But
Bolton's
there's the man.
Dominance went, Kev. Bolton's
dominance did go, but we just saw Kernahan take that mark, and he really has been the star for Carlton. There was a lot of talk at the beginning of the season when Kernahan was made captain, but I think tonight he's showing why he is captain, because he's an inspirational player. We see here, now this is a passage of play where you see the Swans. Beautiful hand passing there by Healy, out to Mitchell, and Mitchell kicked 2 great goals in that quarter, running into goals, and he very rarely misses. On the handball department, the Sydney Swans, I think that indicates 105 to 67 that they've got plenty of players around the ball. They're very quick with their hands. The kicks department, very little in that, but I feel that handball one is the significant one where the Swans have had the numbers around the ball.
I just got the feeling towards the end of the quarter, as Carlton did start to sense that there might be a revival on, that their scrapping and endeavour lifted a bit, and I guess that's what they've really got to do to make a fist of it in this last term.
The reason being, Tim, is that they had more use of the ball, and they've got so many brilliant players, Carlton. We've seen in the past that if they play the low sides, they can really cut the weaker teams to pieces, because they have got some very brilliant players. The question mark has always been, can they produce it against solid tackling opponents who will be Adam right throughout the game? So maybe the Swans, the pressure was off a little bit, and some of those good players came into the game in that quarter. So Robert Walls is hoping for certain that they can even lift again, because they've still got a big task in front of them.
Well, they've certainly got to have their best quarter of the match. They kicked 4 goals in the first quarter, 2 in the second. Didn't get one until, almost 20 minutes into that third term, and then got 3, but a couple really by virtue of 15-metre penalties. It's hard to see them kicking enough goals, I would think, in this last term to win the match.
Well, I don't know about that. I think they are capable of kicking goals, because when you've got a player like Kernahan who's kicked 5 goals, 5, and he's marking so well, that if you can get the ball down to him quickly enough, I mean, he's quite capable of kicking 10, as we saw when he played for South Australia against Victoria. So he's such a great player, they're in with a chance.
Start of the last quarter at the Sydney Cricket Ground. The